Time is going very, very fast. I think there's been a problem with this clock for a while, but I'm not too sure what exactly is going wrong with it. I think I wound it up the other day and it was all fine, and then all of a sudden a little thing sort of snapped in the back, and now it's doing this. I think it needs resoldering on. I've soldered it so many times now, but say for something from 1890, it really is it's struggling a little bit. So cosmetically it's fine. It was working fine for about a year, but what has happened, I can show you. Don't panic. I know you're going to think, oh, he's ruining it by letting it do this. I'm just letting it wind down till it stops. This is what it came off, and basically it was soldered on it, and now it isn't. Now it came off. I have fixed it several times before, but obviously you can't just get it right. And I have tried contacting a guy that does clocks like this. He told me that I'd be waiting about 2 years before I could get it booked in, and when I could get it booked in, they'd want so much to do the bloody job. So I just said, well, I don't think it's worth it really. At the end of the day, there is obviously problems with it, but I can't afford thousands and thousands of pounds to fix this old German clock. But at the same time, I really want to keep it because I really do like it. So I was thinking whether this clock here, it's not a very good clock. It's only an old Enfield clock. And I know people are going to say, oh no, you can't take this bit out of there and put it in there because, you know, it's not original and all of that. But if it works, I don't care. I can't see any reason why it might not fit in there, other than the fact that the mounting might be different. I'm not an expert at all. I really do not claim to be an expert on clocks. But what I do know is this one works, and it looks ever so ropey on the outside, but the mechanism works. This one, however, there's a few things wrong with it, and I think the main problem is that bit that we saw earlier, which seems to go on the gears to regulate the pendulum. That bit there. As I say, you can comment on this video and say, oh yes, you can't do this, you can't do that. But at the end of the day, it's my clock, and I'm not an expert. All I want is a working clock. I don't know much about old clocks like this, but I've tinkered around with a few. I'm not an expert. I just try and get them working if I can. When they start misbehaving, there's not a lot you can do really, especially when they're, well, this one's 1890, so it's 130 years old. And it seems a shame to rip that mechanism out to put it in there really, but if it means it works, that's what I want. But it's a shame really. It's a lovely clock. I'd say it was working fine, solid for about a year, and then all of a sudden I just heard this banging noise, like you said, like you saw on the video. It just, time was going really quick all of a sudden, so I'm not entirely too sure. But luckily it's not a hard thing to take apart to fix really. You just undo the 2 screws underneath there. Take the hands off with a pair of pliers carefully. Oh, we're going again. Seems to have a mind of its own, doesn't it? Bloody thing. So it's a lovely looking clock. It really is a lovely looking clock. I varnished it a couple of times and sanded it down, and it really does look nice. It's just a shame that whatever's happening here is causing this issue really. But I'm not sticking my fingers in there trying to stop it. I literally just wound it up a minute ago to see what had happened, and obviously that bit must have flew off at some point. So it's ever so well made, the glass there, intricately put in. It's only held in with a couple of little nails. This whole brass plate comes off, but you don't have to take that off unless you're doing some serious work on the cabinet or something. These little plaques here or whatever you want to call them, all individually put on with tiny screws. I took all of these off very carefully and I polished them all, and then I lacquered them as well. It really is a lovely piece, really. As I say, and if you know anything about them, anyone online, do give me your suggestions, because obviously I know it's not supposed to run like this, obviously. So apart from what's ever happening, it's all right. The springs ain't broken yet, as far as I know. Yeah, it's been in relatively constant use, really, for a long time. Just a bloody shame that something's going wrong with it, really. Especially when you think of how old it is. 1890, I should think, from what I've read online. But the thing is, if I wanted to sell it, I would get way more for it if it was working, really. This bit's not original, because if it's a Jaughans clock or Jaughans clock, it would have had a J on there with a crown or something, I think, or a star. It doesn't matter, it seems to work okay. The chime works. The springs work fine, as you can probably tell. It's been wound up for a long time. Now it's just slowly letting the inertia out of the springs. And what I'm going to do is just going to let it wind down slowly, and then I'll take the mechanism out and see what I can do with that annoying little bit of metal. I've got a spare hand there, if anyone needs a hand with anything. Ha ha ha. That, I think, which came off of it, which is also broken. So there's not a lot I can do with this, really, is there? I'm not an expert on clocks. There's a spare chime hammer. What's we got here? Oh yeah, that thing. Oh, hang on, there's a bit more in here. Yeah, that's something that had snapped. That went on there, I think. Just on there, if I remember. I don't know really anything about clocks. All I can tell you is how I've seen them work or whatever, really. But if I can take the mechanism out of this one and put it in that one and it works, I will be happy, because that's all I want, really. As I say, I've had this clock a long time. It's a lovely piece, I really do like it, but unfortunately, by doing what I want to do with it, it's going to devalue it quite a bit by putting a Smith's clock mechanism in there. But at the end of the day, it's better than putting a battery mechanism in there, really. But so there's not a lot you can do, really, something like this, unless you're very good at doing clocks. As I say, I've spoke to people about it and they've just given me excuses why they can't have a look at my clock. I mean, I've had several clocks. I had a rare Smith's electric clock, but it was like a hybrid clock. It was an electric winding clock, so basically when the power went off, it would use the power in the springs to take over when the electric was cut off. So that was quite an interesting clock. But as I say, it's yeah, it is a really nice clock, and I don't really want to have to take the mechanism out and put in one out of an old Smith's clock. But until someone can help me, there's not a lot I can do. I have been asking for help about this clock for a long time, and if I keep getting excuses or things, it's saying that they can't do it for months, or it's going to cost this, that or the other. I mean, hundreds and hundreds of pounds or some stupid amount. I'm really not going to be interested, because I haven't got hundreds of pounds to fix this item. I have a £10 clock from the boot fair, which works, which is not in very good shape. The laminate's coming off the side, but it works, and at the end of the day, a clock is for working. It's not there for a decoration piece, really. It's a functioning antique. So I really hope I can have a look this afternoon and see what I can do, really, because it's a lovely oak cased clock. I mean, it's absolutely gorgeous. If you look at the detailing there, it really is really nice. And someone has gone to a great effort to make this clock, and it looks very, very nice. It's sort of like that Gothic German look to it, really, isn't it? And of course, it's not the only clock I've got. I have quite a rare Smith's electric Westminster chiming clock up there, which, you know, people give Smith's a bad name, but that thing has been powered in or wired up for the last 3 years, and it's never missed a beat. The only time it's stopped is when the electric goes off. It's never had an issue at all. The old electric mechanisms are very accurate. You never have to adjust them. The time it says is the time it says, because it works off the mains frequency. So, you know, realistically, that is a very accurate clock. I mean, it's one of my favourites in my collection, really, to be honest. A bit sad, really. I don't get out much, but I like my clocks. I like my antiques. I like my valve radios, my record players, my gramophones. I mean, it's like the sound of the tick. You could just listen to that. You could sit here and just listen to that. It's so therapeutic just listening to that. And of course the sound of it as well. You know, that brings back a lot of memories to a lot of older people, I should think. I have, however, got another clock mechanism here, but this one is no good at all. This came out of my dad's long case clock that he had. Several things have gone wrong, as you can probably tell. It's not in the best of shape. He was actually interested in paying someone to overhaul it and all of that, and I suggested to him that it's really not worth it, really. I mean, I'm not obviously a clock expert or anything, but I know for a fact that... Oh, it's ticking, look. I know for a fact that it's not worth it, because you can just pick up old second-hand clocks quite cheaply, and most of the mechanisms are very similar, especially in clocks that are on the wall, or clocks like mantle clocks. Like if we look up here on this clock here, this was my great granddad's clock from 1920. It's not a high-end clock or anything like that, but it is a really nice clock. But unfortunately, after I changed the mechanism, the pendulum that was on it unfortunately makes the clock too fast, so it's the wrong time. Also, one of the springs has gone, but it does work. But obviously it's way too fast. It's like an hour out. I don't know if that's something to do with the pendulum, the weight of the pendulum, but I do know that the mechanisms are very similar between this type of clock and the mantle clocks. They are very similar from what I've seen, because this one came out of a long case clock the same as that. I think that might be the original, but if you look, you can clearly see that it is virtually the same, other than the fact that it's more of a skeleton mechanism, this one, and you can see everything. Unfortunately, there are a lot of things wrong with this mechanism. It's been very well used, I should think. It's got a logo on there of 2 elephants. Don't quite know what that logo is. I've never seen it before. As I say, a lot of these clock mechanisms, they've still got a bit of life in them. But say, unfortunately, when they go wrong, it's normally a major issue. And the issue that my dad had with this mechanism on his clock was to do with this snail gear here. Every time it got to the end, which was, I think, 12 o'clock, I'm not 100% sure, it would stop. And I think when I looked at this before, it was either this lever here or something stopping it that would force the clock to stop, and you had to sort of like almost reset it, as it were, by lining the snail gear up with 12 o'clock on each segment, because it starts at like here or something. I would say, I'm not 100% sure. You have like 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, right round to 12 at the end. And of course, when it got to the end, it was sort of jammed. and of course that will cause the clock to stop every time at 12 o'clock. And if you adjusted it, it would stop every time at 1 o'clock or every time at 2 o'clock. And I couldn't work out for the life of me what was going on there. I really had no idea. I'm not an expert at all on clocks. But what I do want to do is get this one at least working somehow. And I'd like to get my great-granddad's clock working. But I'm on a very low budget, really. And I'm not an expert in clocks, but if I can get it working, I will be happy. As I say, the last thing I want to do is put an electric quartz-driven motor in there or something, really. If I could put my Smith's mechanism in there and wound it up and it worked, I'll be fine. I'll be happy, because at least then I can use it to tell the time. Other clocks which I have in my possession, not as exciting. There is a couple of Westminster chimes upstairs, but I'm not going to dig them out. I've got a couple of electric mechanisms by Smith's here. Nothing too fancy. They're not wired, plugged in or anything. I just did them up to sell them on. But you'll notice that the style of the hands are different. So maybe slightly different specifications. But if you look behind them, this one's obviously had to have glue put on it because it was missing the plug and everything, but it is electrically safe. Unfortunately, they get sort of battered and bruised over the years. This one had to have a clock winding key soldered onto the bit where you set that time and to start the clock because it was missing. And say other than that, that is pretty much the situation we have at the moment, really. So if you've got any comments or views or anything at all, please do let me know, but don't have a go at me for telling me that I shouldn't be doing this, that or the other, because at the end of the day, these are my clocks and I would like to get them all working properly. As I say, this one's fine, other than the fact that the pendulum that's on it seems to be either too heavy or something, and it's always like 3-4 hours out sometimes, so I don't quite know how to adjust that. And also one of the springs went. And this is why when you go to boot fairs and you see clocks for sale and people want 20-30 quid, they don't sell them, because a lot of times they're so easily broken or damaged over the years that the best thing you can do is just pay 5 to 10 quid for each clock, and then sort of hope that you can make one out of two sometimes, which is how I work, really. If I can make one out of 2 clocks or one out of 3, it's not the end of the world. As long as I can get one working, I think I'll be happy, I think. Okay, well, thank you very much for watching this video, and see you in the next one.